There's a guy coming your way who looks like he wants to violate the Geneva Convention all over you. You might want to take him out first.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you for tuning in. This is DJ Fob Fresh from SegaShiro.com, the Sega resource, and today we're bringing you a video review of Alpha Protocol. Michael Thornton's Adventure is a game that's been getting a variety of reviews right across the board, some very high and some very low, and in some ways the game deserves it. Let me explain why. If you're merely to judge this game on graphical merit or graphical presentation, it would rank very, very low, simply because there's tons of pop-in, there's lots of little technical issues like enemies will jitter against walls, or your partner AI will get stuck in animation routines, and the depth of field effect when you're shooting the gun is misapplied and doesn't look right. So if you're merely to judge it on graphical presentation, this game would immediately drop down in score, and that's probably a reason for a lot of the reviews being kind of poor for the game. Another potential issue of this game is one of expectation. If you kind of watch screens and the videos of this title, it seems like it's just a third-person shooter, and it really isn't. This was developed with an RPG focus in mind. So if you don't put your points into your weapons, then your aiming will be off throughout the game. Now, this is a bit of an interesting issue because on the one hand, the game does not seem immediately accessible because many gamers will just want to go in, start shooting stuff. However, if you kind of get the RPG system, then you really start to play to your strengths. And that's where the success of this game lies in, because then those points that you put into one aspect of your character or another really start to become more and more apparent as you get through the game. One of the coolest things about this game is that you can really make your character feel like your own character. For example, in my first run through, I focused on sabotage, assault weapons, and pure strength. It was just how I wanted to play the game at the time. My second run through, I was all about stealth, and really, depending on how you choose and how you augment your character with your stat levels and your points, you can really change the feel of the game because you really need to approach it differently. Sort of on my second run through, I was buying intelligence all the time, which would give me maps and lessen enemies, and that would change the gameplay itself.
Don't worry, they're not getting anywhere near.
Where Obsidian put a high degree of polish was in the menu system where you level up your character and in the dialogue trees. So let's talk about the dialogue trees first. Essentially in Alpha Protocol, you don't choose your exact sentence word for word, but you choose a tone. And in this way, you kind of have to judge what your other characters are thinking and manipulate them as such. It's really kind of an interesting way to handle conversations in a game. I found this aspect of the game very interesting because you really had to read your characters and the characters you were interacted with. You could do this by reading up on the dossiers or experimenting early on in conversations to see how they react to certain tones, whether they preferred your professional tone or your suave tone or your angry tone. And better yet, you didn't have to make every character like you. You can piss some characters off, and that will actually be to your benefit. It's all about reading the situation, reading the characters, and the game is actually fairly dynamic and will give you different options depending on what you choose to do and say. If Alpha Protocol was all about choice, in that way it does excel. One of the more interesting aspects to Alpha Protocol, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, is that there's an incredible amount of customization. You can customize weapons, different parts of your weapons, your loadouts. You can also customize the different suits you can take on into missions. You can, depending on how you play the game, you get perks. You can customize those on your playthroughs. It is clear that the customization options and the RPG elements are where most of the polish of Alpha Protocol went. In terms of customizing your character or making the character that you want to create, it's very, very straightforward and very easy to do. So Obsidian did a great job at crafting the RPG elements of this game. Where the one issue is you can't really customize Michael Thornton's dress very much. So while you have a few options and a few different looks for his haircut and, his beard, the choices there aren't extensive. Not nearly as extensive as they are for his weapon loadouts and his different suits and his perks. So on the one hand, there's tons of customization options, but you can't really change the look of Michael all that much. In terms of voice acting, the voice acting is pretty strong throughout. Probably the weakest character is Michael Thornton himself, and that's mostly because he comes off as a bit dry. I personally didn't mind his character, but I know a lot of other people did, and so I'm just merely putting that out there. One of the things that I really liked about this title was the real-world setting and the real-world situations that you find yourself in. One could make the argument that a title like Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2 are technically more proficient than this game, but the dialogue system and just the atmosphere of this title really resonated with me specifically. I mean, who doesn't want to be a spy? And I liked all of the political intrigue in the game. Suffice to say that I enjoyed Michael Thornton's adventure, and I enjoyed how much I could change that adventure depending on the choices I made. The presentational elements of it do not live up to the other aspects of the game. So when many people were asking me, what did I think of this game, I'd kind of scratch my head and said, well, there's parts of it that are terrible, and yet I'm having a lot of fun. And if that's your measure of a game, this is definitely one worth checking out. This is DJ Fob Fresh signing out, saying keep on gaming.